All right, so big stories this evening. James Comey's daughter, Maurene Comey, has been fired by the Department of Justice. This is just a stunning announcement. Secondly, NPR and PBS, part of the rescission bill to defund them has been passed by the House, but it's coming with some reaction, which we're going to get to in this video. As always, I'll show you what both sides are saying and give you the bottom line.
This is a Fox News alert. This has been a bad few-week stretch for Jim Comey's daughter. She was just fired by the DOJ. She's known for a couple things. She just lost the Diddy case, of course, and she was Jeffrey Epstein's prosecutor. So the daughter of the former FBI director, James Comey, she's a veteran federal prosecutor, worked on these cases. Maurene Comey is fired. So this is sending tongues a-wagging as the internet personalities and others, and this show has asked questions about what happened with the files, why did we overpromise and underdeliver? But the president has made his opinion on this very clear over the last couple of days.
Okay, so really there's only two scenarios in regards to this announcement, because we know how President Trump feels about Jeffrey Epstein and that entire debacle. Scenario number one, this is a phenomenal announcement because President Trump, once again, is shifting the narrative within the media. Making an announcement like this does grab people's attention. She should have been fired ages ago, and this is a great step towards accountability. Now, will she be prosecuted, investigated? I don't know, because currently as it stands, the Department of Justice has not convicted anyone from the prior administration of crimes that people believe they committed. Now, scenario number two, which is definitely much more boring, maybe it took Pam Bondi this long to finally pull the trigger. Either way, both of these scenarios lead to more questions than answers. But again, it's still a great announcement and the right step towards accountability. Now, here's Byron Donalds and what he had to say.
Congressman, I know you sat through that deposition today, but first, your reaction to the breaking news. Comey's daughter out, Pam Bondi, says, we don't need your services anymore.
Well, it's about time. She hasn't really done that good of a job. And at the end of the day, President Trump wants results from every part of the administration, including the Department of Justice.
You don't think it has anything to do with Epstein?
No, I don't think so.
What's your response to all the, there are a lot of influencers, and of course on this show we've asked for answers about the Epstein file. It looks like they overpromised what was actually in the files. There's not much in the file, or as Alan Dershowitz said, there are no files. What do you think about all this?
Look, at the end of the day, I think you got to have transparency in this whole deal. A lot has been made about what
was on the tapes,
what was on the tapes, what was Jeffrey Epstein doing, what happened in the jail. Like, I know Cash Patel, know Dan Bongino, a ton of respect for both of those gentlemen, Pam Bondi as well. I'm skeptical about, whether it was suicide or he killed himself. But I think as more information comes out, I think being transparent with the American people is the way to go.
Do you think the president will just at some point just say, just to stop the speculation, put it all out there? But he seems to say people who are pushing for this aren't really supporters anymore, which I think there are a lot of his supporters who just want the answers.
Well, I think potentially, but look, I would say look at it from the president's perspective. He is on a winning streak of delivering for the American people time after time after time again. You want to talk foreign policy, domestic policy, everything in between. He's doing his job.
Yeah, so Byron Donalds points out the bigger picture here is that the president accomplished some historic items on his agenda so far in his presidency, and we're only still 6 months in, right? And that should be recognized, celebrated, and acknowledged. But again, two things could be true at the same time. President Trump, you've done a phenomenal job, but your Attorney General, Pam Bondi, she overpromised and underdelivered on this Jeffrey Epstein situation. So don't gaslight your supporters on how they feel about Pam Bondi, because that would be doing what? That would be acting like a Democrat and how they acted over the past 4 years. So that's the only thing. And here's what Charlie Kirk had to say. People are talking about Jeffrey Epstein because they love Trump. We are fearful the same people who tried to kill Trump, impeach him, and throw him in prison were behind Epstein. Epstein represents a symbol of an out-of-control shadow government, and this is a chance to bring it to heel. And that's one perspective from Charlie Kirk, someone who clearly is loyal to President Trump and only wants the best for him and our country. But the bottom line is the questions are not going to stop. Now, here's what CNN had to say about the firing and what they believe is going on here. Take a look.
Let me ask you about this because we just learned that a federal prosecutor named Maurene Comey was fired from her job today. She just so happens to be former FBI Director James Comey's daughter.
Yeah.
She just happens to have been a prosecutor in the case against Jeffrey Epstein.
Right.
We don't know anything more than this. What do you make of that?
So,
with him saying it's a Democratic hoax.
Yeah, and let me be careful here because you're right. There's a lot we don't know. I've been talking to people who are in that office right now. All they know is she's been fired. As you said, she is Jim Comey's daughter, and she was the prosecutor on the Epstein case and the Ghislaine Maxwell case. If, and I want to underscore that word if a bunch of times, if this is some effort to strike at Jim Comey, it's an absolute act of cowardice. It's a low blow. It's absurd. If this is the beginning of some sort of effort to turn Maurene Comey into the scapegoat, to say, well, she handled the Epstein and Maxwell prosecutions, she screwed it up, and she's the cause of all our problems, that's a travesty. That's nonsensical. She prosecuted these cases 4 years ago. What does that have to do with all the hypocrisy about production of these documents now?
It doesn't matter whether it has anything to do with it now. The only thing that absolutely matters is, will Pam Bondi come out and explain her decision making? Now, do the American people deserve to hear from Pam Bondi on why she fired Maurene Comey? Probably not. I wouldn't expect her to explain herself because she definitely didn't explain herself with Epstein and those files, right? So we should probably not have any expectations on that. I would be focusing on, what will the Department of Justice do moving forward with Maurene Comey? Are they going to investigate her? Are they going to prosecute her? Because then it starts to make sense of what's going on here. But if they don't, and they just fire her and they don't say anything, then they leave people the room to start speculating and come up with conspiracies.
Yeah, Anderson, I was going to say, and Ellie, I don't think that, Maurene Comey is going to, be the salve or the ointment that solves the wound here, that, solves the wound, because so you fired. They're going to still say, make the documents public. We want to see the names. If there's a list, if all these people say that we know this list exists, they want to see the list. People want heads on pikes.
Yeah, and because people have not let it go up to this point, it caused the president this morning in the Oval Office to pretty much lash out at people who supported him over the years. I'll play you the clip and then give you my reaction.
Mr. President, I know you want to move past all this intrigue over the Epstein files, but I do want to ask you to clarify something you said this morning. You said this was all a hoax. Has your Attorney General told you this was a hoax? What evidence have you seen of that?
No, it's not the Attorney General, no. I know it's a hoax. It's started by Democrats. It's been run by the Democrats for 4 years. You had Christopher Wray and these characters and Comey before him. And it's a bad group. It started, actually, look at the Steele dossier that turned out to be a total hoax. The 51 agents, the intelligence, so-called intelligence agents, it was a hoax. It's all been a big hoax. It's perpetrated by the Democrats. And some stupid Republicans and foolish Republicans fall into the net. And so they try and do the Democrats' work. The Democrats are good for nothing other than these hoaxes. They're bad for policy. They're bad for picking candidates that can get elected. Like in New York, we have a communist running. He may get elected too, actually, but he'll destroy the city. It's I call it the Epstein hoax. It takes a lot of time and effort. Instead of talking about the great achievements, we've had a great gentleman. Yesterday, as you know, went on CNBC and he made the statement that Trump may go down as the greatest president of all in the United States. And instead of talking about the things we've achieved, we've had tremendous achievement. They're wasting their time with a guy who obviously had some very serious problems, who died 3-4 years ago. I'd rather talk about the success we have with the economy, the best we've ever had, and all of the things we've done, including in the Middle East. I mean, you see it. Instead, they want to talk about the Epstein hoax. And the sad part is it's people that are really doing the Democrats' work. They're stupid people.
So obviously, we're not stupid for asking questions about Epstein. However, what the president is really arguing here and why he's so frustrated is because when you accomplish all these things he's accomplished, you would expect that that's what people would only focus on, that they couldn't, I guess, walk and chew gum at the same time. I think we can acknowledge the accomplishments from President Trump and continue to support him and talk about those things like I've done today and on these other days and other people as well. And we could still ask questions about Epstein, particularly from Pam Bondi. I don't understand why it has to be or. Why can't it be and? Okay. Now, here's what Bill O'Reilly had to say about why President Trump said what he said.
So it's immediately it's politicized and it's foolishness.
Right.
because Congress can't force President Trump to release anything. They can't. I mean, it's not in the Constitution. But they're just doing this to embarrass Trump. And that's what really teased Trump off. That's the essence of the story. He knows that the opposition is using this, a bunch of phonies, because they didn't care about it for 4 years, to try to hurt him. And then his own people, his loyal people, are helping the people that want to hurt him. So he goes, I don't need you. Okay. All of this could be put to bed in half an hour, where Pam Bondi gets out there with Merrick Garland, who probably wouldn't show up. And if he did, he'd take the fifth, as all the Democrats are doing now in the House hearings about Joe Biden. But you can put a chair and Merrick Garland's picture, tape it to the chair. And then Bondi says, here's what we found out in a general way. I'm not giving names because at this point there's nobody under criminal investigation. And so it's not fair. So no names. But here's what we found out. Questions from the audience, and the audience asks questions. There'll be stupid questions because the press is generally stupid. And Bondi should be able to just float right above it.
And you know what? That's exactly what we expected from Pam Bondi on day one. But on day one, we got someone who went onto Fox News probably more than anybody else in that cabinet and continued to make promises that she was not able to deliver on. That's the sticking point here. It's a values issue. You cannot hype it up for conservatives and then underdeliver and think we're not going to say anything. Now, again, if you're on X, if you're on social media, you probably talk about this more than people who are not. No question about it. But that doesn't mean the way you feel is invalid or people who don't care about this is invalid. Both things are true at the same time. Now, here's where things get entertaining for me, because as you know, Democrats are so desperate, they try to capitalize on all these moments politically to try to score points and undermine the president. And what's interesting is they're so desperate that even CNN confronts them on why are you guys trying to capitalize on Epstein when you had nothing to say over the past 4 years? Take a look.
Yeah, but I think I'm asking because there are plenty of Democrats who, some more gleeful than others, but many who are willing to say, oh, you know, look at this. This is a mess for Republicans, and to really seize on it. So it just seemed like the question is, well, there was a Democratic president who could have done more about it.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Could have done something about it. But remember, who is the group that's been making the most out of this? It's been Donald Trump and his followers, Donald Trump's vice president, J.D. Vance. The day that Pam Bondi had that White House event and said that all the files were coming out, I had Republican colleagues up here in the Senate who were salivating at the notion we're finally going to get what we've been asking for. Why would they then do a 180? It just doesn't add up.
Well, we know Democrats have done 180s forever now, right? I mean, they say one thing but do another, and that's been their history, okay? So that's number one for me. Number two, Tim Kaine is the last guy that we would ever accept an explanation from on this subject in particular, because the point is still true. They had nothing to say over the last 4 years in regards to Jeffrey Epstein. They had nothing to say when it comes to holding people accountable unless that person's name is Donald Trump.
If you see such a need to investigate this, why didn't you raise it during the Biden administration? I mean, we couldn't find that you made any public comments about Epstein in previous administrations.
Well, I would have been happy to raise it then as well. Frankly, we were focused on so many different pieces, but I have been one of the Democrats that has been consistent on what I call out Republican presidents for and Democratic presidents for, whether it is FISA, reforms that we need, whatever it has been. I've been pretty consistent. War powers. I've criticized Joe Biden just as I'm criticizing Donald Trump. I think transparency is not something that should happen only when you have a Republican president. It is something that we need for both Democratic and Republican presidents.
So then why didn't you call for more transparency earlier during the Biden administration? I'm just trying to better understand why you are so intent now on calling for this.
Well, I think I gave it the same focus that I'm giving it now. We haven't, I think I've released information around this issue. My focus has been on the big bad betrayal bill, and I will continue to focus on that. But yes, I think that this information should have been released under the Biden administration. It should be released under the Trump administration.
So, of course, Democrats, they have no way to respond to that because, again, they keep digging themselves a hole. Instead of focusing on actual real issues and also trying to collaborate with the president and recognize when he is doing things that are good, like securing the border. We talked about that earlier today. They're trying to play politics, and it just is not going to work in their favor. Now, here's what Scott Jennings had to say about Democrats and their strategy to try to capitalize on this whole Epstein situation.
It's clear that Republicans and some of his supporters want answers, and they've wanted them for years. That's absolutely true, number one. Number two, I think it's also true that Democrats today are being completely disingenuous about this, whether you're Ro Khanna or Dick Durbin or whoever is out there making news and noise about this today. Joe Biden had these files for 4 years. Democrats have been in Congress while these files have been sitting around, and nobody seemed to care about it until they thought there was a political wedge to be used against Donald Trump. So I think his frustration here is that Democrats sense that this is the first time they've been able to get their footing really since he took office. And he knows that. He has political instincts. So I do think Dems, frankly, are being disingenuous when, look, Joe Biden could have released this at any point he wanted to, and they chose not to. Now it's a national emergency. So I think on the immediacy where Democrats are attacking him, Trump does have a point.
Absolutely. Again, you can walk and chew gum at the same time. The president wants to focus on his accomplishments. The people who support Trump also want answers in regards to Jeffrey Epstein and also want to recognize his accomplishments. I don't see why two things can't be true at the same time. That's really the way that I see it, and I believe that's the bottom line. Okay, so now we go to our next story, and this is great news because once again, President Trump has kept his promise, and that is to defund NPR and PBS. And we know that was in the rescission package that was just passed yesterday. And as a result, you have people coming out and reacting to this bill passing, including the CEO of NPR and PBS. And here's what one of them had to say. Take a look.
Because part of the argument from the administration is that public broadcasting has become politically biased. They describe it as radical woke propaganda disguised as news. How do you respond to that? And that being part of the reasoning for PBS and other public media no longer deserving taxpayer support?
I don't think that Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood is a biased program. It teaches children basic skills around letters and numbers. And when you look at the breadth of programming that we produce, we are very much committed to serving all of America. The news programming that we do represents about 10% of our broadcast schedule, and that includes the News Hour, of which I'm very proud of the excellence of the journalism of that series. So I would push back. I always ask is biased one way or another. I ask them for examples. People often struggle to come up with examples of what really they're talking about. So we're always interested, obviously, in making sure that we're serving a multiplicity of viewpoints. Bill Buckley made his home on public broadcasting with a series called Firing Line, which continues today with Margaret Hoover. We are interested in having different perspectives that we bring forward. But when I look at the range of our programmings on public broadcasting, I can't make any sense of an argument that we are somehow biased in any way.
Okay, so you'd have to be an idiot, blind and stupid to believe what she just said, which was what? PBS is not biased whatsoever. Yeah, you are, just like everyone else, including myself and you right now watching. We all have our own bias. The question is, to what degree? And does that degree disrupt people and their ability to think for themselves? Right? As you guys know, I tell you, don't always believe what I say. I show you what both sides are saying. I give you my opinion, but you got to make up your own mind at the end of the day. It's not for me to tell you what to think. PBS and a lot of these legacy outlets, they try to tell people what to think. They're very strategic about it because they've had decades, generations of the practice of programming the public. So let's get real here.
The NPR and PBS components this is, in our view, the misuse of taxpayer dollars. They're biased reporting. They're not objective. They pretend to be so. They have for a long time. And the people don't need to fund that. I mean, we're in an age of, you all know, you work in the industry. I mean, media is so multifaceted now. There's so many avenues and areas for information. And while at its origination, NPR and PBS might have made some sense, and maybe it does now, but it shouldn't be subsidized by taxpayers. So these are simple questions to answer for us. The House has acted appropriately, and I hope the Senate will do the same. I've urged them, as I always do, to please keep the product unamended because we have a narrow margin and we got to pass it. But we're going to process whatever they send us whenever they send us, and I'm hopeful that it'll be soon.
And that is a good point of clarification. So the rescission package from President Trump that defunds NPR and PBS was passed by the House, but it still needs to be passed by the Senate. And the other thing that I didn't mention earlier, because we already know their bias, is taxpayers don't want their tax dollars going to NPR and PBS. They don't care if they're biased or not. They just don't believe we should be funding that. And that's just the way public opinion is at this point. Now, here's what Senator Chuck Schumer had to say.
Now let's talk about the cuts to the CPB, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Millions and millions of Americans, over 10 million Americans, 13, live in regions of the country that will be affected by these cuts, including millions of rural Americans and native tribes. And these cuts to local stations couldn't happen at a worse time, with floods and natural disasters front of mind. When a flood happens, when a tornado touches down, when a hurricane makes landfall, people need immediate, up-to-date alerts to stay safe. And sometimes, all too often, public broadcasting is the only way for people to hear what's going on. It's a matter of life and death.
And this is a great life lesson, right? The story of the boy who cried wolf. You know, Democrats, they have a habit of just being so aggressive, hyperbolic, and always exaggerating what they're saying, okay? It's not a matter of life or death, okay? We live in a time of internet. Starlink exists at this point. And Chuck Schumer, you'd be smart if you worked out a deal with Starlink that would make sure that people in rural areas had access to internet and things that they would be able to get information from. But last time I checked, when Biden tried to provide internet to rural areas, we see the money went down the drain. So once again, Democrats, they don't have a leg to stand on this. It's not a matter of life or death. There are a multitude of options that people can get access to information. At the end of the day, all media to some degree is going to be biased, no question about it, but it does not mean taxpayers need to be funding it. And that brings me to your opinion in the comment section below, please, to the story. So again, I know you're annoyed with the whole Jeffrey Epstein. I'm annoyed. I'm done. I don't like talking about it. But every day that President Trump reacts to it, we almost have no choice. But the good news here is the Department of Justice announced the firing of Maurene Comey. And so I definitely want to know what your thoughts are about that. And then secondly, what do you think about this whole NPR and PBS situation? We know they're biased. They definitely deserve to be defunded. Do you believe it's a matter of life or death? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As we mentioned earlier in this video, President Trump has plenty of accomplishments that we could be focusing on, and we did earlier today in a new Border Patrol report that shows the crossings are at 0 again. So if you guys missed out on that and more stories from earlier today, all you have to do is click on that video because it's coming up right now.